Most people buy floor-standing speakers for their small room and end up with boomy, muddy bass that sounds worse than the bookshelf speakers they replaced. The frustrating part is that the speakers are not the problem at all. The room is. More specifically, the way those speakers are positioned in that room is destroying the sound before it ever reaches your ears. Today we are going through the 6 most common floor-standing speaker mistakes in small rooms, the exact fix for each one, and 6 specific models that are genuinely well-suited to smaller spaces. Before we get into it, drop a comment below telling me what size room you are working with and whether bass control has ever been a frustration in your setup. I read every comment, and if speaker placement content like this helps you, hit subscribe and leave a like. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Why small rooms and floor-standing speakers are a difficult combination. Before we get to the mistakes, let us understand the real problem. Because once you understand what is happening acoustically, every placement decision in this video makes complete and immediate sense. Small rooms have a specific acoustic challenge that larger spaces manage more naturally: standing waves. Between roughly 40 and 200 Hz, exactly the frequency range where floor-standing speakers produce the most bass energy, a small room creates pressure buildup zones and cancellation zones entirely determined by the room's physical dimensions. Bass frequencies that do not have enough space to develop properly bounce between the walls, floor, and ceiling, and interact with themselves in ways that cause certain notes to boom dramatically while others nearly disappear. The result is bass that sounds uneven and genuinely difficult to control, not because the speakers are poorly designed, but because the room itself is fighting them at every low frequency. The good news is that you have 2 primary and genuinely effective tools for managing this: your listening position and your speaker placement. Used correctly, those 2 factors alone can dramatically transform how a small room sounds with floor-standing speakers without spending anything on new equipment. Mistake 1. Pushing speakers too close to the walls. The most common and most damaging mistake is placing floor-standing speakers flush against the rear wall because it seems tidy and space-efficient. When a speaker sits close to the rear wall, that wall reflects bass energy back into the room and adds it to the direct sound from the speaker simultaneously. The result is an uncontrolled and significant boost in low frequencies that makes bass sound bloated, one-note, and physically separated from the rest of the music. Every note in the bass range starts to sound roughly the same because the room is exaggerating certain frequencies regardless of what the speaker is actually trying to reproduce. The fix is to pull floor-standing speakers at least 1 to 2 feet away from the rear wall and give them similar clearance from the sidewalls. This single physical change is consistently the most impactful placement adjustment you can make in a limited space. One practical note: front-ported speakers can sit closer to the rear wall than rear-ported designs without producing the same bass buildup, so check where your speaker's port is located before deciding exactly how much distance to work with. Mistake 2. Wrong speaker spacing. Getting the distance between your 2 speakers wrong affects stereo imaging just as much as bass performance, and it is an easy mistake to make when room furniture and wall positions seem to dictate where the speakers must go. Speakers placed too close together produce a narrow and congested stereo image, where instruments and vocals feel compressed into a tight central zone with almost no width or surrounding space. Speakers placed too far apart create a gap in the center where the presentation feels unstable and disconnected. For most small rooms, a spacing of 6 to 8 feet between the left and right speakers provides the right foundation for a wide, coherent, and convincing stereo image. The listening position matters equally. Most acoustic engineers recommend forming an equilateral triangle between the 2 speakers and the primary listening seat, where the distance between the speakers roughly equals the distance from each speaker to where you sit. This geometry consistently produces the most even and spatially convincing presentation in a small room. Mistake 3. Incorrect toe-in angle. Toe in refers to how much the speakers are angled inward toward the listening position, and getting it wrong is one of the most consistently overlooked reasons a floor-standing setup sounds flat and lacking in stereo definition. When floor-standing speakers face completely straight forward, with no toe in at all, the tweeters, which produce the high-frequency detail that determines clarity and stereo imaging, are pointing past the listening position rather than directly at it. The listener hears an off-axis response from those tweeters, which is typically softer, less detailed, and less spatially defined than the on-axis response when the tweeter is properly aimed. A gradual inward angle toward the listening seat corrects this immediately. Experiment with small adjustments, since even a few degrees of difference produces a noticeable change, and the correct amount varies between different speaker designs. Mistake 4. Tweeter not at ear level. The tweeter needs to be at roughly ear height when you are seated. If it is significantly above or below your seated ears, high-frequency response will be uneven and stereo imaging, the sense of instruments and voices being placed precisely within the soundstage, will feel vague and diffuse rather than focused and well-defined. Most standard floor-standing speakers position their tweeters correctly for typical seated listening. But if your seating is unusually low, or the speaker cabinet is particularly tall or short, checking this alignment takes 30 seconds and can meaningfully improve the precision of everything you hear through the system. Mistake 5. Speakers too large for the room. Not all floor-standing speakers are appropriate for small rooms, and choosing a model with drivers that are simply too large for the space is a mistake that no amount of careful positioning can fully compensate for. A large floor-standing speaker with a 12 or 15-inch woofer produces far more bass energy than a small space can absorb or manage. Even with good positioning, the low end in a small room with an oversized speaker will be consistently overwhelming and fatiguing. In a small room, compact floor-standing speakers with 5 to 6-inch woofers are almost always the better choice. They produce the right amount of bass energy for the space, remain easier to position correctly, and deliver a more balanced and genuinely enjoyable result in the environments they were designed for. Mistake 6. Skipping acoustic treatment. Assuming that speaker placement alone is sufficient and that acoustic treatment is optional is the final mistake. And in a small room, even basic treatment makes a more significant difference than most people expect. Hard parallel surfaces cause early reflections that arrive at the listening position milliseconds after the direct sound from the speakers. These reflections smear the stereo image, reduce instrument and voice clarity, and exaggerate certain frequencies in ways that feel congested and fatiguing over time. Absorption panels behind the speakers and at the first reflection points on the side walls address these problems directly. A rug under the listening area controls floor reflections. Even bookshelves, curtains on bare windows, and soft furniture throughout the room contribute absorption and diffusion that improve the acoustic environment for any speaker in a small space. 6 floor-standing speakers that actually work well in small rooms. Now let us look at 6 specific models with design characteristics that make them genuinely appropriate for smaller spaces. The Wharfedale Diamond 12.3 is the best budget option at around 450 to 550 pounds. Its compact 98-centimeter cabinet and wide sound dispersion mean placement does not need to be perfect to produce good results, a genuinely practical advantage in a small room. Multiple What Hi-Fi awards confirm its smooth and refined performance at entry-level pricing. The Fine Audio F501E at around 999 pounds is the best overall value. Its IsoFlare drive array keeps bass taut and controlled, even in acoustically challenging environments, and is notably unfussy about room positioning, a quality that becomes extremely valuable in a small space. The Q Acoustics 5040 was specifically engineered with smaller rooms in mind, which immediately distinguishes it from most alternatives. Its curved cone drivers produce controlled and articulate bass that does not overwhelm a limited space, and it consistently receives praise for being refined and easy to live with long-term. The Dolly Oberon 5 is a compact design with a wide dispersion pattern that produces well-integrated sound even when the listening position is slightly off-axis. Useful when room constraints limit where you can actually sit relative to the speakers. The Amphion Argon 3LS is notably flexible with room placement compared to most speakers in its class, and produces a neutral, accurate sound with deep bass that does not feel overemphasized. It is the right choice for listeners who prioritize accurate reproduction over theatrical excitement. And for budget buyers, the ELAC Debut 2.0F 5.2 offers a true three-way design with an aluminum tweeter and a wide soundstage at a price competing directly with the Wharfedale at the entry level. It consistently delivers performance well beyond what its price would suggest. Before you blame those floor-standing speakers or decide the format does not work in your room, work through this list of 6 mistakes first. Pull the speakers from the walls. Set the correct spacing. Angle them toward the listening seat. Check the tweeter height. Match the speaker size honestly to the room, and add basic acoustic treatment where you can. Drop a comment below telling me which mistake was the hidden problem in your setup. Hit like if this video helped you, subscribe so you do not miss the next one, and I will see you in the next video.